competence.
He'll be your walking.
Okay, great. The question, Aaron Reich's
secretary.
question is how we, oh, good, Bernie. So how do we understand that Hashem created us with the Yetzer Hara? We only get, Chazal have an opinion at least, that we get the Yetzer Tov only at Bar Mitzvah, which means we have 13 years of training with the Yetzer Hara. We get really good at it, some of us better than others. And then we're supposed to launch ourselves into the world of the Yetzer Tov, when we have all our bad habits intact. It's a massive question. I have a few initial thoughts. Maybe other people have something else to add. Bernie, welcome.
How you doing, Rabbi?
Yeah, great to sort of see you. You're welcome to do what you want. Look, the policy is, I see Ari Zayler, welcome back from last night. I see a lot of you are taking this for credit, which is great. I think the rule is that we ask you to have your audio. Well, audio, I know there might be friction in the background, but at least your video on, so we see that you're here and not multitasking. And I just ask that too personally because I like to see you. I love interacting and people who are out there who are like real and involved in everything that we're doing. That's my own request. But obviously you're free agents too, especially the alumni we're very blessed to have their presence and their participation. Obviously, you guys do what you feel like doing. So here are a couple initial thoughts. One is that the Yetzer Hara is obviously the physical world, meaning that's the raw form. And as we're born in raw physical form, there isn't an opportunity. It's not conceivable that there could be a Yetzer Tov. Yetzer Tov is something that needs to be cultivated. And so it's necessarily something that's learned. And learning only can happen when a person has proper das. And in many, many areas, Chazal and halachically as well, we learn that a person, hi Eliar.
Hi, Rabbi.
Welcome. A person only has das, when he's older, he comes of age, he's 13 years old, and even then it's not a completely mature, developed das. So it's more of just, I think the way to look at it is a natural progression. We're just not equipped to control ourselves. And then, of course, at 13, so much happens all at once. Then the hormones set in. That's also by obviously Hashem's design. Some of us remember Bernie. Who else was? Nobody's here. Ari Swift was here yesterday, but Bernie was in the Shiur the year we learned Kiddushin, and we learned about the Yetzer Hara. And I don't know if you remember the fantastic quotable Meiri on this. Anybody know what I'm talking about? The Meiri and Kiddushin about aging. Rav Chizda in the Gemara has this comment that he said, they asked him why he became a Gadol Hador and what he attributes his success in learning to. What does he attribute that to? He said, because I got married when I was 16. And then he said, of course, if I would have gotten married when I was 14, I would have been much better off. Nice. So the Meiri comes and explains, and you should look it up. I'm recreating it from memory, but it's really profound inside and eloquent. He says because when you get married, obviously that's the healthy state, and you have a natural outlet for your yetzer, your drives, and as you age, as your das develops, it's optimal then to be in such an environment when you have a chance to channel your drives for mitzvahs, for good things. As we age, and we're not in a marital context, we still have those desires. We have to sublimate them. We have to somehow suppress them. But we learn a lot of bad habits. I mean, again, nobody here would know from such things. But you're aware that people out there, some of them, they even heard of pornography. I understand.
That's for sure.
No, really, I'm sorry, I shouldn't use such words, but you understand what I'm saying. There's a corruption that ensues as you go down the line. So actually, the Meiri, Aaron, if you're considering what I'm saying, he's actually coming from the opposite perspective. He says, you can only really get it when you're 13, but then once you're 13, wouldn't it make sense to get married right away? Because then you have a chance to kind of develop in sync with your yetzer and then use the yetzer for mitzvahs automatically. So why does the Gemara say 18 years old is the time? It's the same Gemara that teaches us that. Welcome everybody who just came in. I'm sorry I don't have a chance to personally interface, but BZ, you're here. Love to see you if you have a chance to put your video on. And even in the days of the Gemara, 14, 16 was. Hi BZ, welcome back. It is a little bit hard, a little bit tricky for people to really be getting married. One of the things about marriage is you have to have a certain emotional maturity quotient. When you get married, it's really nice also if you stay married. Yoni, welcome. Yoni Greenblatt, great to see you. And that's all the more so today, which is why many of the post-game encourage us to wait until we're really of the right mindset. But great, thoughtful kind of a question. I've been opening with random questions. I like to keep this informal. We'll launch in a moment. We'll get back to our topic at hand, which is say for Iyov. Anybody who is just joining us now, and I know Yona, for example, said you can only come a couple times. Whatever you can make it for is amazing. So Eitan Van is doing us a great chesed, and I'm recording, sending it to him, and he's going to post it and send you the link. You can see yesterday's link in the group chat. So anybody who wants to stay consistent, I would love it if you did, because you'll see there's a beginning, middle, and end of where we're going. I'm not just, this is not just extemporaneous. We really have material to cover. And so as we grow together and add our own insights, we can move from one step to the next. So as much as you want to stay on top of things, maybe we have time for one more random question. The way also we did last night, I think worked well too, is if anybody wants to hang it, I'll finish. I'll try to aim to finish at 10. Everybody's doing this for credits and actually can't stand me and finds this totally dull, which I completely understand. Then can check out officially at 10, and the rest of us can hang out, and then all the good stuff can flow. But anyway, anybody wants to hang out and schmooze informally afterwards, what a nice format this is. I'm grateful for the chesed of Zoom. Anybody else have a good random question that might be of collective interest here? Oh, you're all intimidated by the format. This is the most talkative crowd I've ever met, and everybody's silenced. Oh no, you're actually literally silenced. All of you have your volume off. No, somebody.
I just kind of want to start you.
Okay, great. Good. Let's get down to business. Okay, I'm going to pick up where we left off from yesterday. So anybody who's coming in just now, try to catch up. I'll inevitably repeat myself because that's just me. We had said briefly, we just said that Iyov is enigmatic. There's a lot more we don't know than what we do know. It's an unusual book by all standards in the Torah. And we set out a little bit, very much skeletal, sketchy terms, some of the major themes of the book. And at the very end, anybody who left, we kind of spelled out the mathematical problem of theodicy, of suffering, and why the world seems so topsy-turvy from our finite, limited perspective. How do you deal with, at least Iyov's presumption is, I'm a good guy. Kadosh Baruch Hu is all just. So then, how does that make any sense then that I suffer? What did I do to deserve this? Question that many people come around to in the course of our existence, which often has a lot of pain. Most of us, this represents, I'm looking out here, we're quite a cross-section of years in Derech over the last 10, 12 years, but think back at your closing banquet, which I always think of as group therapy on steroids. and just think about how many people are crying and how many life stories, and somebody starts unloading on all of us, and you think, wow, that happened to you. Who knew? Who could think such a thing? Right? And you realize, collectively, individually, we go through so much in this world. And so how does that make sense? How does that come out? And we suggested very sketchily some of the answers, but of course our time together is going to try to unpack that. I hope that we're going to get some deep insights and much that will stick with us and give us some mechanisms to cope with. And I hope to get us all very, very frustrated too at our inability to give any definitive answers to some of the big questions. But I think in the groping for some kind of meaning and reason, I think we'll get very far, B'ezras Hashem. So as to Ezra Schwartz's request, let's get down to business. First question I want to start before we get into the actual text of Iyov is, again, this is a book that I'm recommending to use as a reference. It's an Art Scroll classic, mostly written by Rav Moshe Eisenman, but also Rav Nosson Sherman, founder of Art Scroll, has a big hand. Clearly, you can hear Rav Sherman's voice if you're familiar with it. Who is Iyov exactly? We really don't know. but that's one of the fascinating, intriguing parts of the whole discussion. As we said yesterday, I'll be quoting a lot the Gemara. It's actually my Gemara. I'm not letting anybody else learn it, but no, it's actually my Gemara this year. I've been learning Baba Basra. Bezras Hashem, I'm angling down. I'm in my 5th final run through the entire Gemara, angling down for a Siyum soon, Bezras Hashem. And Baba Basra really deals with Iyov in depth. There, the opinion is that Moshe Rabbeinu, the author, in addition to the 5 books, Moshe wrote Iyov. Now that makes sense because we said yesterday also it was Moshe who actually asks the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hareini Kvodecha, show me your ways, Hashem, and welcome latecomers, Gavi, welcome Aviel, and so since Moshe Rabbeinu really kicked off the whole discussion on suffering. And why it seems to our perspective that the righteous have an unfair shake and the wicked sometimes often even prosper. So Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who was intrigued by this from the get-go. But you should be aware as well that there are other opinions. The dominant view is Moshe wrote it. There's an opinion that Iyov was the author of his own book. That happens. That he was defined in the Gemara as in Baba Basra as a prophet. A Navi certainly is capable of writing his own sefer. In fact, there are psukim in the 19th chapter of Iyov that indicate as much. Seems like it's autobiographical. There's another opinion that a figure that comes in, he just appears near the end of the book. He's got like one big brief cameo scene stealer, the kind of things that you win Oscars for. His name is Elihu. And some say that he is actually the sneaky author of the book. And then there's another opinion that the book was written by the 2nd greatest prophet of all time. That would be, of course,
Eliyahu.
Eliyahu.
Eliyahu, you might be biased in that one, but not Eliyahu. Who's considered by, at least according to the dominant view in Chazal, who else?
Ezra.
Ezra's likened to Moshe Rabbeinu, but in terms of Nevuah, no, not Yirmiyahu. Yeshayahu, Isaiah, maybe the author. Now, Yeshaya, it would be an intriguing author as well. He definitely delves in a lot of these themes. Yeshaya presided over a period of the mid to late, a period of the kings, the First Temple period, where there was a lot of mischief, a lot of troublemakers in the world, and he blasts the Jews. But he also is the author of some of the most sublime, hopeful, optimistic nevuah of all times. I mean, you know that. What is written? The UN is an organization that does not have much in terms of fanfare or ornamentation. But they have one empty wall that has one pasuk sprawled across it. It's from Yeshaya. What's the verse? I mentioned it. I gave an alumni shiur a few months at the beginning of the year. I mentioned it then. A couple of you were there. What's the pasuk on the UN wall? The Isaiah wall, as they call it, symbolically. Really, nobody knows? It's a great piece of trivia. Impress your friends at cocktail parties. No? Lo isagoy el goy charev lo yilmadu od milchama. He envisions an end of times without war. The nation will not lift up sword against other nations, and they will not study war anymore. So Yeshaya is somebody of the Bible critics can't figure out Yeshaya. He's got so many different dimensions to his personality that, of course, they, typical to the Bible critics, they say, oh well, he must have been split personality, and therefore there are multiple authors of Yeshaya, right? But we're all split personalities. We all have lots of different dimensions, and Yeshaya could see lots of different aspects of life, much like we'll see in Iyov. So he's an intriguing possibility if he's indeed the author. Who is Iyov? Maram Baba Basra says, who was he? Was he a good guy? Was he a bad guy? Has anybody actually gone through the psukim and gone through the basic story in Iyov yet? Not yet. Okay, I'm encouraging you to. It's different. It's a difficult book. It's very intellectual. A lot of people are talking. I guess you could say it's my kind of a book, right? I mean, they're talkers. There was a movie in the early '80s called My Dinner with Andre. That's basically just a couple of intellectuals talking the whole time. I mean, for this generation, it's probably deadly. I mean, as a proof of that, has anybody here heard of it? My Dinner with Andre?
I've heard of it, and I've been wanting to watch it, yeah.
Oh, wow. So you even know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I think of Iyov as the My Dinner with Andre book of the Tanakh. Because it's a bunch of smart guys sitting around talking about smart things.
The biggest podcast right now is I just want to point out the biggest podcast right now in the US, maybe the world, is like he brings on a lot of intellectual speakers.
Oh, is that right? What's the name?
Yeah, Joe Rogan. He's not an intellectual, but he brings a lot of.
Oh my God, Joe Rogan is the best. I love him so much. He's the funniest guy in the world.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Real quick.
Anyway, so that's kind of the dimension. Maybe we're on the same page then. That's kind of the dimension of Iyov. But it's good to go through. If that's too much and it's overwhelming for you, but you still want to get something, at least pull out your Tanakh, and even if you do it in English, do it in English if necessary. The words are hard in Iyov. I mentioned last night that there are words that appear in Iyov that that's the only place in the entire Tanakh, and they're not used elsewhere. So wow, that's pretty challenging. So if you do it in English, fine. But go through at least the first 2-3 chapters. The first 2 are the big narrative chapters. And then if you must peek at the end, it'll intrigue you and probably knock you out, mystify you. Unless you want to wait till the end and you don't want to ruin the surprise of what happens. But and also big question is, does it end well or not? That's something we'll have to discuss. Okay. At the end, though, when Iyov, I did tell you, I did go away a little bit. There is an encounter that Iyov has with the Ribono Shel Olam, and it's one of the famous ones in all history, with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And the Gemara in Baba Basra says, could it be that a whirlwind passed, the Kadosh Baruch Hu passed in a whirlwind, and that you became confused, chas v'sholom, that Hashem should become confused between the names of Iyov or Oyev? Very, very, another one of these mystifying Gemaras. Iyov and Oyev are 2 words that have the same letters and sound an awful lot alike. Just rearrange them a bit. Iyov is our character. It's the only person that we find with this name. Anybody have any brothers or distant cousins named Iyov? Not a common name. I can't recall anybody in history. Certainly, I've never met one. And Iyov. So it's an intriguing, unusual name, and it has the same root of the word Oyev, which means.
Does it mean enemy?
It means enemy.
Enemy.
Yeah, it means enemy. In which case, which is startling, because one thing is clear is Iyov, at least as if you just read the Pashut Pshat in Iyov itself, he's a good guy. Look how we meet him. He's introduced very beginning. I mean, first psukim. Ish haya be'eretz Utz. There was a man in the land of Utz. Iyov shmo, or maybe it's Oyev, the enemy. Somebody could hit the low notes on the piano, please. Right? Right. Iyov shmo. V'haya ishahu. Who was this guy? That man. How was he? Are you ready? Are you keeping track? Some of you are taking notes. Huayat tam v'yashar. Virei Elokim v'sar meira. Okay, we'd all like those words on our eternal resume, trust me. They translate, how does Rabbi Scroll translate it? He says he was a man tam, of it, they call it unquestioning integrity. Tam is a word that we know. Who do we associate with in the Bible? Yaakov Avinu ish tam. Rabbeinu Tam's name was Yaakov, so he became Rabbeinu Tam. We associated with Tam. So Tamimus is a stellar quality, and as Arshwell has it, unquestioning integrity. Right? He's coupled with a probing mind. He stood in awe of Hashem, and he completely eschewed, which means avoided evil. I mean, that's a good person, no? Right? That Taka, good guy, right? So that he should be also somehow called Oyev. Who is he? Which one is he? Right? It's very, very, very intriguing. And you almost feel, is it Moshe Rabbeinu, is it Yeshaya, is it Iyov himself? It's almost like, he's trying to like stir us up, trying to intrigue us with the contradictions, with the different personalities. Welcome, Shammai. Something not usual is afoot in Iyov. Okay. Another Gemara in Baba Basra as we try to angle who was this fellow Iyov. There's an opinion here in the Gemara in Baba Basra. If you want to look it up, by the way, the really just a couple pages in Baba Basra. They'll give you a great overview. It starts on, I'll do it in English, 15a and goes all the way to 16b. Very doable. Take you a few minutes. Take out, again, if the Hebrew is intimidating or the Aramaic is intimidated, that's Tes Vav Amud Aleph to Tes Zayin Amud Beis. Take out your R scroll. R scroll is helpful because they have the wonderful comments in the notes in the bottom that will enlighten you greatly. So it's there that we find a Talmid Chacham who's not identified. And it says about Iyov, who was he? We mentioned this last night. Lo haya v'lo nivra. What does that mean?
He never was, and he was not created.
Yeah, right. Garnished. Nished. No such thing. What does that mean? Who was this guy? Well, it turns out he evidently was, as the Gemara will start to call him, according to this opinion, he was a mashal ba'alma. He was just a parable. He's a construct. Well, that's no fun. Okay, but stay with this. We're not going to be done with this just yet. Some kind of a metaphor. Something that I hope nobody ever calls you or me. Right? Now, he's not a real person. He's just kind of like a metaphor for stuff. Right? Flesh and blood is much more interesting. I'm looking at a few of you. Actually, I can only see your blackened screens. Some of you are supposed to be taking credit. Unblacken your screen. Let me see you. Gavi, I want you to be involved in this. You're supposed to be asking me all your amazing questions. Thank you. I'm looking forward. Josh said he talked you into coming to this. Okay, so he's a mashal, he's just a parable. So maybe. Rambam has this to say. He says, we're going to find a bunch of opinions of who he is. Both the Tanaim and the Amoraim disagree, but they imply that Iyov lived in a whole bunch of different times. I'll fill this in, the truth is. Let me tell you. Rav Levi Bar Chama in the Gemara says he was from the generation of Moshe. Rava argues that he's from the generation of the spies. What's weird about that machlokes? Really obvious?
Before people were in Israel.
That's the same generation.
It's the same generation. Right? I mean, Moshe the spies. So what are they getting at? Right? Clearly there's something that would indicate perhaps that it is a mashal. Meaning somehow it wasn't so much for the generation of Moshe, but somehow he's an extension of Moshe's personality or experience. And then Rava's opinion, he's from the generation of the spies. So he has something more to do with the spies. But this is a wide open machlokas. We're not just done. Others say he was a contemporary of Avraham. There's an opinion he was a contemporary of Yitzchak, and yet one that says he's from Yaakov's generation. One said he was down there in Egypt, Galus Mitzrayim. One said he was from the Judges, when all was complete hevel, which means vanity or state of anarchy. One said he came from the time of Achashverosh. Woo! We just fast forwarded way into the future after the destruction of the first temple. Another one says he came from Malchus Shva, the queen of Shva, right? That would be from Ethiopia, but that's not clear when that would be. That's only a geographical location, not clear when he would have lived. Others say he was from the Kasdim, that would be the Babylonians. The Rambam, in considering this, and these views are all over the place, the Tanaim have arguments, the Amoraim have arguments. They say that he lived in a bunch of different times. Well, if he was an allegory, then maybe he was meant to be not a real part of history. He was really meant to be somehow eternal in this way. And it's particularly odd, especially if you know a little bit about learning Gemara, a lot of Talmidei Chachamim out there, you know, a Tana has an opinion and a Mora doesn't argue with it. And a Mora is nobody to argue with a Tana, and yet here we find exactly that. And even if, you know, what is an Amora having a tradition? If it's unknown to the earlier generations of Tanaim, how does the Amora know it? What's the basis of his knowledge? The Gemara is dealing with the oral tradition. So unless perhaps that each of these opinions is making a different abstract point and not really recording history. Who was the wife of Iyov? There's an opinion that his wife was Dinah Bas Yaakov. That's a wild idea. I personally am more on board with this opinion. Oh, I'm sorry, Bernie got kicked out and here's Shmuel Eisenman. I'm kind of more on board with that one. Do you know who else Dinah was said to have married?
Shimon?
Yeah, Shimon. Well, that one takes a little explication, doesn't it? But we're not going to go there tonight. Maybe in random questions another night. So anybody who's come on late, which I think is the majority of the people at this point, Eitan Van has posted this. You can see it in the chat. I'm recording. It'll be posted. But don't just be lazy and don't say, well, I'll see the recording. I really prefer if you're here, and I really prefer if I see the video, if I see you and you participate. I'd love this to be more involved in involving of you. Okay, so, you know, she's Dinah. There's another opinion that the wife of Iyov is some non-Jewish woman out there. And again, her identity is as mysterious as his. Rabbi Yochanan says that he came with the Ole Gola. Pay attention to this one. I'm going to get back to it. He came with those who came up from Bavel, and his base medrash was in Tiberia. Now, that's a weird one. Hillel wants to see you all. Come, Hillel. Come say hi.
Yo.
What's up, Hillel?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Wow. He's grown so much in the last 2 years since I've seen him.
Chutzpah, no? Right? If anybody, especially the tour guide hopefuls out there, pay attention to the details. I'm getting right back on track. Hillel's going to upstage me, I realize, but listen to this. Again, Rabbi Yochanan just said, okay, he came with the Ole Bavel. That means chronologically he would have come back with the Babylonian exiles, the refugees who are now returning at the beginning of the Second Temple period. And he lived in Tiberia. Who lived in Tiberia during that period? Maybe you know? You know your Eretz Yisrael history? No tour guides out there? Are you what?
Yehuda Nasi? No.
Sanhedrin.
So that's much later. And that's kind of, they were going to get there. That's kind of the point.
No one? Did anyone live in
No.
Tiberia?
No, Tiberia didn't exist. Thank you.
Oh, that's
Right. Good. You nailed it. Right? No, there's no Tiberia. There's a place called Hamas or Chame Tiberia, which is south of Hamas later, Hamas Tiberia. There's a place called Rakas is in the Torah. Tiberia doesn't exist. Who builds Tiberia for the first time in history? Herod's son, Herod Antipas. After the destruction, right before the destruction of the Second Temple. And it's uninhabitable by Jews because it's full of tumah. It takes till Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai comes and cleans it up. Remember, that's what he does after he comes out of the cave. Ooh, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, like Bomer's coming, we're all gonna have bonfires in our backyards. Feel bad for Meron this year. So the whole thing is chronologically out of sync. That's just bizarre. He lived in Tiberia. What's Rabbi Yochanan saying? I'll get back to that, but make a note of that one. It's a great one, and I have what I think is a very good shot. Again, I hope you have your own creative shots, and please share them as they come if you're taking notes. Okay, so who is Iyov? We're all over the place. We have an opinion. It's clearly not everybody's opinion. But there is a strong opinion that he's a mashal ba'alma. He's just a parable, not a real person, but just just somebody, a construct of sorts. And nowadays we have movie characters, and sometimes mediocre movies where, it's so obvious that there's a screenwriter who's making up this character to say all the things, a doppelganger, somebody's saying all the things that he wants to say to drive the plot forward. Even if Iyov was a parable, and the whole book is just a story that never happened, it's just a parable, there's another possibility, though, if you're with me. Maybe Iyov was a parable, but also a real man. Meaning, it's since I'm talking about the movies now, meaning it's sort of like, those movies that are saying based on a true story, in which, I haven't been to the movies in some 20, 30 years, but 30 years, wow, I'm old, you're old. Right, so, but, in my day too, they had these things based on a true story. You knew that they took a great literary license with this one, and it probably bears very little resemblance with fact. But, maybe Iyov actually was a real person, and that this whole book will then take license with it and make a construct out of it, but that it is based on something akin with reality.
So, Rabbi, is there potential? Could we potentially say, we know that I think they say the same thing about Sefer Yonah, that Sefer Yonah, Yonah existed, but at the same time, the Sefer is also a mashal. Is anyone say a correlation between Sefer Iyov and Sefer Yonah, or not really?
Why are you assuming that Yonah is a mashal? And especially, where do you get that from?
If I remember correctly, I think Rabbi Ari quoted the Gra on that.
Okay. It's difficult. I'm certainly not going to take on Rabbi Ari on such a thing. We have multiple opinions. It could be a medrash to that effect, but there are strong views. Look, it's widely accepted that Yonah is not just a part of his book, but he was a living, real prophet who took an integral part in history, particularly in the second book of Malachim. He appears, he's not named there, but there's an anonymous prophet that really the dominant view in all the Mefarshim and based on Chazal is that Yonah was the official prophet appointed by Elisha to anoint Yehu and to kick off the new dynasty of Yehu after the house of Achav, so that he played a vital role in the events, and so that's why I'm resisting your suggestion. But maybe we say that they're and then let's assume that he is a mashal. You want to make a connection there?
Well, specifically in the point that I don't think anyone said Yonah was only a mashal, but that in addition to actually living, that the Sefer Iyov is a mashal. So we've been talking around the idea.
You're also connected with Yonah?
The Sefer Yonah also, besides for him actually living, that the Sefer is mashal.
Could be. Yeah, there is allegory, no question. And again, it could also, the same question could come up, as we just said. It could be an allegory, meaning the details could have been embellished by Chazal or by the Navi himself to convey a certain critical point that needs to get across, but that we're not meant to take it at face value or to film the cinematic version in our minds. This opinion, and it is just that, is an opinion in Iyov that it is just a metaphor, a mashal, is not the only opinion. And we learn in the Medrash Gadol Vayikra, Rav Nassan rejects it entirely to the point that actually he says, not only is he not a parable, he says, I met his grandchildren. Okay, so he, according to at least some opinion, and this is a Tana, he said, he was real. Make no mistake about that. Another opinion, Rav Meir Arama cites a tradition that his grave was in Constantina, in the Levant, and was a place that people visited, make pilgrimage to Iyov's grave. That would seem to indicate that he must have been a real person.
Is Constantina another word for Constantinople, or not really?
That's a question. That's why I said Levant, somewhere in what we call the Middle East today, possibly. But you see, that would be a real anachronism then, because Constantinople was only named for Constantine, and that'll be in the late Talmudic period. That would make the chronology a little difficult, but I don't think that's a critical point for now. The Ibn Ezra, based on a pasuk in Yechezkel that connects Noach and Daniel and Iyov. Noach, Daniel, and Iyov. I know I talk fast, and I want you to get a lot of this material. Said that the following point, says that Noach, Daniel, and Iyov were complicated figures. Each of them were saved by their own respective tzidkus, their righteousness. Okay? That's based on a pasuk. Now, Noach and Daniel were definitely real. Nobody says that they're an allegory. Iyov is included with them. It would seem then, based on this, that actually he was real. So, one way of reconciling all these views is to say, well, okay, maybe there's some kind of an allegory at work here, but it was based on a true story. That's a possibility. Keep all this in your mind as we go down the line too, because I think it'll inform a lot of what goes on in the book. At the end of the day, we don't know. We don't know the answer to this. We don't know the answer to many of the questions here. When Hashem visits Iyov in the end, in the whirlwind, even Iyov, you should know, never receives clarity. With all the various contradictions of his fate. So I think in a sense, it's almost as if Iyov is meant to come to us as an enigma, as somebody who's like shrouded in an aura and there's a fog around him. And we're ultimately left, with a lot of information and not absolute clarity ourselves. I'm quickly checking in. And especially the people who are quiet, and not been out there, but I just want to see how is this? Is this working for you? Is the audio clear? Am I going too fast, too slow, or are we okay? Also, the framework is I'm delighted to see everybody. It's a big group. I can't control that. I had no idea what to expect. I thought it would be personally a private conversation between me and Eitan Van. But whatever it is, I'm really thrilled that everybody's here. But don't be intimidated not to speak because there's so many people out there. I mean, what's the difference? What difference does it make? You don't have to be embarrassed. Or as we like to say, if you can't be embarrassed here, where can you be? But in terms of like how we're flowing, it's okay for you. If you want to take notes, you're able to take notes. Fantastic.
Yeah, very well.
Yeah, great. Okay, but let me know. Let me know. Send me a chat. Send me an email. Give me feedback as we go. So I'll keep going weiter. I'm finding myself doing a lot of the talking, which is fine if that's what you want. Anybody want to ask a question at this stage? I'm at a little bit of a break.
Rabbi,
Or you have an insight?
Do you have like a source sheet or like a notepad with all your sources on them, or is it all just up here?
No, not at all. I'm cheating like crazy because one of the things I mean, as technologically unsavvy as I am, one thing I did figure out is that I can pretend like I'm looking at you, but in fact, I have my Word file on the scrreen looking at all my notes. Oh, you just thought I was much smarter than I really am.
So cunning, yeah. I just thought you memorized it.
I'm flattered by that, but no, I'm not all that bright actually. It's all from a crib sheet.
Could we like have it?
Ooh, only if you're nice and you ask me, send me a personal email. Sure.
Are there like secret
the only
Kabbalistic
problem
secrets
with
on it?
that is that you know where I'm going and it gives away the ghost. But if you'd like it, I don't have any secrets. Sure. Just send me an email and I'll send it. I don't want to post it to everybody because then it ruins the whole show. But you're welcome to it. Bernie, what do you have?
I just don't understand. I don't know how Sifrei Tanakh becomes Sifrei Tanakh. I know there's a discussion about it in Gemara.
Bernie, one notch louder and slower. It's not so clear, the audio.
Okay. I don't know exactly how Sifrei Tanakh become part of that. So I mean, I know there's a discussion about that in Megillah about Esther trying to get the Megillah to be part of it. But like, if something's just an allegory, you not hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
If something's just an allegory, does that it constitutes something that could be part of Tanakh? Meaning, well, I guess that's true. We actually have a lot of storm like that. But meaning, if it seems odd that we have something that's so part of our Torah kind of, Kibbachtav, that might not have, we don't even know where it's from or if it was something that occurred. So I just want to understand like how that becomes part of Tanakh if it's not tangible, I guess.
I appreciate the question. I think I have a consolidated answer too, for a change. We're used to sometimes thinking of the Bible as a history book, and it sort of can be seen that way. There is a lot of history in it, but it really isn't predominantly a history. The Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, Iyov falls in the last group in Ksuvim. The Tanakh is really Navi and Ksuvim are an extension of the Torah, is Hashem's way of teaching us how to be alive properly. And so it has everything in there that we need to function. It needs to be explicated. We need the oral tradition to unfold it and to make sense of it. But then it's going to be a lot more than just a history. And in fact, the history itself sometimes is misleading and confusing. Trying to piece it together, because it's not really meant, as we know, famous machlokus ein muktam umuchar b'mikra. There's no real. Rashi says this many times. There's no real chronological sequence. It's to convey moral messages. Well, Iyov certainly works that way. As we've said, it's a unique work that is the hands-on, more so than any other work arguably in the Tanakh, certainly that deals with suffering and reward and punishment. And so even if it didn't happen, that's okay. We don't need it to have happened. I mean, it's teaching us a lot, and it gives us many, many tools to deal with these problems. That's enough. Good question. I'm going to go weiter. Again, I'm going to do my best. We'll try to finish the class part of the class at 10. 10 my time, 3 your time, or wherever you guys are. We're people from all over the world here. And then I'll hang out if anybody wants to schmooze. So, okay, a little bit more on who is Iyov. In the art scroll, Rav Eisenman, who I'll be quoting a lot, he's great, he suggests that Moshe wrote the book with non-Jews in mind, and he wrote it for the non-Jews. If that's true, then of course the figures presented Iyov at the forefront were all before the Torah, or at least concurrent with the Torah. That's how Moshe knew them. And that then would make Iyov and his friends be decidedly not Jewish. We'll mention this, but the Gemara in Baba Basra brings a machlokus over their religion. And there are opinions that he's Jewish at least, if not maybe the friends. But there definitely are opinions that they're goyim. And if this is true, then they're definitely non-Jews. And there's a lot to be made, a big argument to be made that they really are not Jewish. It's very striking, especially anybody who knows some Bible, has gone through the Tanakh. It's very unusual. They never discuss the Torah. They don't discuss doing mitzvahs. That's strange for a Jew. Maybe in modern times not, but in pre-modern times, Jews were from. Baba Basra brings a wild story. It says that Iyov, and this is not what you get from the text, it's definitely a backstory that presents maybe an uglier part of his character. But according to the Gemara Baba Basra, Iyov used to steal property from orphans, work on it, and then return it to them improved. Okay, so there's a lot of this seems to be virtuous. He's doing them a chesed. On the other hand, technically, it's usher. You can't steal from Yisomim, from orphans, even if you have their best interests in mind.
Did you say
right?
he
So,
was
you just can't do that. Anybody getting ideas from here? I'm always worried about saying Shiur, because, what if a guy is really spaced out? And he said, "Oh, yeah, it was really great, Shiur. The rabbi said you could go and you could take money from orphans. It was really great." Wow.
Wait, did you say he returned it? Like he returns it? After?
Yeah. Like, in other words, he had their best interest in mind, but you can't do that, right? That's just not the way.
He tried telling them first.
No, he didn't tell them. That's why it's a problem. Certainly, if you want to do that to my apartment, we really desperately need it. But get my permission first, Shammai,
I don't understand. You think if he's doing them a favor, they'd want to let him do it. They'd want to let him take it.
Right. Well, that's the problem. That's why he did. Again, it's a background story to tell you a little bit more of this Iyov figure. I think as we approach it, as we go down from night to night, we'll find we're going to be, really peeling the layers off the onion. And Iyov is quite a massive bulb of an onion, with many layers. So here's like another little piece that Chazal are tantalizing us with. But this basic idea that he's probably a goy, and that the messages of the book of Iyov are maybe universal, and maybe Moshe was trying to teach the non-Jews certain basic ideas. Certainly other indications that they were not Jewish. The names, Teman, of locations, and the names of the people, Eliphaz, Boots and Uts, Booz and Uts. They seem to come, we can identify them with the families of Avram and Nahor. They use a coin called the Kasita. The only time we find a Kasita coin, it's actually famous. Who remembers? Yaakov Avinu purchases which city from Mea Kasita?
Shechem?
Shechem.
So then wouldn't that place him chronologically?
Maybe.
Unless this coin is just
put your
been used throughout
detective
all
hat
history.
on. I don't know. Maybe that's an indication. There's a kasha based on this Gemara. The Gemara says that really a lot of Iyov is meant to be universal. It's meant to teach the non-Jews in general about a lot of the themes we're discussing. There's a kasha here. You're not allowed to teach them Torah. Goy shalom Torah chayev misa. So that's easily answered. It may be that it's for us to understand from their perspective, meaning we have to look at it with universal glasses. Clearly, the deeper themes are for Jews, but we would see it as a book that applies universally to non-Jews. Alternately, you could say the kind of learning that a non-Jew is prohibited to do is the stuff, take out your thumbs and do Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos. But the universal themes of Iyov are human, timeless themes. Those are arguably very much relevant for the non-Jews as well.
Can you teach non-Jews things of is there any difference between things you could teach, for example, like girls are supposed to learn? Is it similar or not really?
Not at all, no. It's the discussion. It's a sugya in itself. I'm tempted to digress, but I don't think we should right now. It's in the 7th chapter of Sanhedrin, where you find a great juicy discussion on everything you want to know about the status of non-Jews. I also have it written up in my files. Anybody would like to see, that's the file cabinet back there, but it's all on my computer now too. So you'll send me a note and I'll send you back all the details about what we can and can't. And it's, guess what, machlokus rishonim achronim, about what we can and can't teach the non-Jews. I'm going to round up. We have a few more minutes, and I want to try to at least finish off this piece about the identity of Iyov, the mysterious identity of Iyov, which is something that I think is helpful to try to unpack and try to come to terms with before we actually start the first chapter, which I hope to do tomorrow night. Based on the Gemara on Baba Basra again, Iyov, his friends Eliphaz, Bildad, Sophar, and later Elihu, these 5 figures are counted in the Gemara as 5 of the 7 non-Jewish prophets. Nevi'im, together with Bilam and his father, and some say Balak. Actually, and some say actually it's not true. You have to go figure out who's who. Elihu is identified as a Jew by many of the Mefarshim. Now that kind of makes sense in terms of Nevuah. There was Nevuah in the world prior to Matan Torah. And if indeed chronologically all these figures, all of this happens before the Jews get the Torah, then that's okay that they have prophecy. From the time the Jews get Torah, so there is no prophecy for non-Jews. Only Jews receive Nevuah from that point. So that may strongly indicate its time frame. Although again, remember, there are opinions that will disagree with all of this and say that it postdates the Torah. Rav Soloveitchik, the Rav associated with YU, in a 1956 article, has the following to say that goes back to some of the ideas we were talking about earlier tonight. The fact that Chazal convey Iyov living in so many different times, before the giving of the Torah, the Shoftim, Achashverosh's period, they come back from Bavel, we find him all over the place. He says, Iyov lived in all of those times. And you know what Rav Soloveitchik said? Iyov lived during the Chorban Bayis Rishon and Chorban Bayis Sheni, and he was there during Torquemada's Inquisition and during the Cossack uprising. He was there in the gas chambers. Iyov should be read according to Rav, and really I think this is a very good shot that really ties together many of the ideas we've been saying. Iyov's struggles are timeless and universal. And if many of the ideas that we're talking about fit so perfectly, immediately I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do? It's Corona times. what's on people's minds. I thought, wow, this is a time for Iyov. And it's very much what Soloveitchik is saying. The questions that return to us as human beings in every generation are all alive and present in Iyov. He is, and I'll quote Rabbi Zimman in the Art Scroll, he's an everyman, quarreling against an incomprehensible fate. That's a great line. Let me suggest a possible proof. I highlighted this a few minutes ago when I mentioned it. Remember I said this Gemara about Rabbi Yochanan? Remember the famous Rabbi Yochanan, the most mentioned figure in all of Shas? Bavli, Yerushalmi, and everything, bar none, no close competition. Number 2, who remembers? In all of Shas? Second most mentioned? Oh, come on, history people. There are a bunch of history people out there. I always emphasize this one. No? His Chavrusa. Reish Lakish, second most mentioned. Anyway, Rabbi Yochanan says, as we said earlier, he came from the Ole Bavel and he settled in Tiberia. And then I was intrigued by that. I said, hey, that doesn't work. Tiberia didn't exist for hundreds of years until the end of the Second Temple period. What's he up to? Why is Rabbi Yochanan saying this? Well, Rabbi Yochanan, who knew Iyov very well. In fact, I think I have a closing line of this entire series from Rabbi Yochanan, who says powerful things about it. So Rabbi Yochanan said he came from Ole Bavel and he settled in Tiberia. I mean, he didn't settle in Tiberia. They're not in the right sync. What is Rabbi Yochanan trying to convey? Who lived in Tiberia? Who lived in Tiberia? Anybody know? Rabbi Yochanan himself. See, when Rabbi Yochanan is saying this, totally plausible, works perfectly. He says, he's really telling us, you know what, folks? I'm Iyov. Remember Rabbi Yochanan in the first chapter of Brachos, how he used to go around consoling people who were grieving over losing people that were close to them? Remember what he used to wear around his neck? If you saw this once, you'll never forget it.
Was the bone?
Oh, Eliyahu, you're so good. The bone, always less than the size of a piece of barley, so there was no problem of tuma. The bone of, do you remember whom?
Yosef?
His child, I think.
His child.
Oh, yeah.
His 10th child that he buried. See, Rabbi Yochanan was somebody who knew suffering firsthand. He buried 10 sons. Chazal say this. There's no bereavement like a parent's grief over a lost child, and he buried 10 of them. He said, I'm Iyov. I live in Tiberia. Iyov is you, he's me, he's all of us. We all have a piece of him. Perhaps that's what the meta idea that the Gemara is telling us. We will, Bezras Hashem, pick up from here. Anybody who's not here wants to get it, I'll do my best to send it over to Eitan. You'll find the link on YouTube. Thanks for coming, and I'm going to hang out and schmooze with anybody who feels like afterwards. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow.
You ready?
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good night.
Okay, Shikoyach.
Thank you, Rabbi. Rabbi, thank you.
Anybody have anything you want to bring up as we see the bubbles pop, the bubbles burst?
Rabbi,
So,
I have a question. Oh,
yeah, great.
No, Aviel, you go.
Aviel, go
okay,
ahead.
so for gay people, what are they supposed to do in terms of marriage? Like, are they encouraged to marry like a more masculine type female?
Nobody says that idea. Never saw anything on that. I have a lot on this topic. I have a file back there. If you want I think what I think or whatever. I think I have stuff to say that a lot of people don't say on it. It's very important, and it's hard for me to capture in a nutshell, but I'll give you a short answer anyway. It's complicated and difficult, and comes up every year in Derek like clockwork. Guys struggling with these feelings. It definitely afflicts people. For some people, it's not an affliction. They're actually, nowadays people are happy about it. Happy. I chose that word intentionally, not another adjective. Right? So, but if you're religious and you care about Hashem, you're conflicted. It's going to be a problem for you. A lot of people get married, and they figure out a way of working. I had in my counseling experience. So I had a number of clients who fit that description. And it's funny, I don't specialize in this. They were coming into me on other issues, and then this came out.
Right.
Isn't that wild? Anyway, evidently it must be out there, because if I'm getting it anecdotally, they're not coming to me as a therapist to see me for that reason. They're seeing me on other reasons, and yet this is also part of what they're struggling with. In a couple of the cases, I mean, again, if I believe my clients, and I don't know, I have no reason to doubt them. I think they were sincere. They have a pretty good working situation. I mean, each one for his own, in his way, complicated, and he figures it out in his own way. But they've worked it out. Some people, I believe this is possible. It's probably a minority, but some people are able to actually change their attraction. It's a possibility. But that's tricky, and you don't want to set people up for disappointment if it doesn't work out that way. And based on my reading and anecdotal information, I think for most people it does not really change. A very poignant letter that addresses your question was written by the Rosh Yeshiva of Ner Yisrael, down the street from you, Bernie. Rav Aaron Feldman, who used to be of Or Sameach, where he, and I can send all this to you if you want it. Just send me emails, and I'll turn stuff around to you. Yeah. He's got some great things he says. He describes how a person who feels he just can't, it's impossible for him to get married, just not within his abilities for whatever reason. He said there are other things you can do. You can do a lot in Kiddush Hashem in this world. The world is a very broken place and needs to be fixed by us. So that's another approach, perhaps.
Okay.
But a lot of people, marriage is not out of the question either.
So it's more so like not a one size fits all like solution at all.
Yeah, not at all. People are so complicated.
Yeah.
It's definitely my experience. I mean, even just the Derek guys. Like they're guys who are fit the prototype of everything you associate with it. There was a guy many years ago who, I mean, I'm thinking just Derek, people have come to me, and those are just the guys who confide in me. I don't even know who's not confiding in me, obviously, but the one guy who's the, like the He-Man, kind of like jock, the last person in the world you'd ever kind of think, wasn't, but like suddenly the thoughts were occurring to him, and like in a yeshiva dormitory, and he was absolutely traumatized by it. And he came, Baruch Hashem, he came to me, and we had some discussions around it, and I gave him a lot to think about, and he was really fine, and I think I calmed him a lot. Today, Baruch Hashem, he's happily married, and drove me around his home city when I was recently visiting the States, and was doing great, right? So that's one possibility. And so people are all over the place. Yeah, there isn't one prototype.
Okay.
We live in complicated times, and people have so many problems. Wow, this is just one of the problems that people talk about. There's a lot more. Yeah. Anything else anybody wants to raise? I mean, I don't have an agenda now. It's just nice to see you.
Just curious, does Rabbi have a file on socialism?
No, that's weird. I mean, I have a lot to say on it.
I mean, socialism within a Jewish construct, because it's coming up a lot more in the States, and it'd be interesting. Like I know the Gemara in Sanhedrin, I think a few other places brings about the idea of David Melech when he's learning. He just has the rich to supply to the poor. And
let me give you a couple things to think about. I don't have an organized file on this, but it comes up in my teaching. One is look up the sugi of onus mammon. And Issa D'Oraisa, it, the one that you're not allowed to overcharge or underpay a sixth. And at core, hashkafically, I mean, it's an Issa D'Oraisa. It's going to come up in a couple weeks in Parsha. So what we really get is that a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to treat each other fairly in business. We're allowed to make a living, but not at gross expense, at somebody else's expense. And so we should be, that idea is in the best light, really what socialism, communism is really angling for. So there shouldn't be gross corruption and, let the proletariat rise up as Marx would have it. But what's being said is that, the world should be a fair place, that everybody has a chance to make a decent income. That's all. The Torah says that. And then the second thing that for food for thought is the other source that says that, of course, is the Nevi'im. I mean, we mentioned Yeshaya tonight, probably more prominent in terms of themes that comes out of the Nevuah is Amos. Amos is great. One of my favorite prophets. I don't know if can you have favorite prophets. I don't know if that's something that's allowed, but if you can, I have one of my favorites is Amos, and he was actually embraced early on by the secular socialist Zionists, and they read into him all kinds of socialist stuff that he never said, but that didn't bother them, and so they found all kinds of ideas. I mean, he has some great lines. Amos, he says he blasts those fat cows. He's referring to the rich women in their summer homes and their winter homes. He hates indulgence and opulence, and people are living, meanwhile while poor people are begging outside, they're indulging themselves in their desires. So those are some ideas that you find early seeds of socialism, I guess, in Jewish sources. Anybody else? Well, fine. Okay, good to see you all. I will. I'll get this recorded and try to send this to you hopefully with greater haste tonight, so we can post it. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.